Hi, this is Dr. Culkin. I wanted to give a little overview of the differences between primary sources and secondary sources, because this is a very important distinction to understand for several of our assignments this semester where you'll be analyzing primary sources. So under here, under information on sources, I've posted a link to a chart that was created by the Borough of Manhattan Community College. So we're interested in primary sources in the humanities, not the sciences, since history is in the humanities. So a primary source is basically a document or an artifact that was created by someone in the past. So here they say it's an original first-hand account of an event or time period. It was written or made during or close to the event of the time period. It can be original or creative writing or works of art. So it can, and then there are some examples: diaries and journals and letters, newspaper articles, government records, photographs, maps, postcards, posters. So it doesn't need to be a written document. It can be an image, speeches, interviews with participants, interviews with people who lived during a particular time, songs, plays, novels, and stories. So it can be a creative work, because often those are great ways to understand the past, as well as drawings, paintings, and sculptures. So a secondary source is something created later on that analyzes and interprets primary documents to understand what happened in the past. It can be a secondhand account of a historical event. It can be an interpretation of a creative work. So examples of secondary sources, particularly for our interest, would be biographies, histories, or newspaper articles that interpret an event that happened in the past. So for instance, in the first assignment, several people, in the first blog assignment, several people found articles that sort of discussed Rosa Parks' legacies that had been published in newspapers around the time of her death. Someone else found an interview with Rosa Parks. So the newspaper articles interpreting her legacy were secondary sources. The interview was a primary source. So it's really important to understand this distinction. And I want to sort of bring up a couple examples of works that you might choose, primary sources that you might choose as you do your work in the next couple weeks, and to clarify what's a primary source and what's a secondary source. So in week 3, you have, for many of the work assignments you'll be doing this week, you'll be reading an essay in Keywords of American Cultural Studies. And then you will also have an opportunity to choose a primary source. And you're going to analyze that primary source. So one of your choices for this week would be Phillis Wheatley's poems. And Phillis Wheatley was a young woman who was an African slave and was a poet. If you go to this website that you're linked to, it's important to realize the poems are the primary source. That is what she created during her lifetime. And analyzing them can give you insight on her experience as someone who was enslaved, brought to the colonies. And it's a very important source because it's one of the few written sources we have from a woman who was enslaved in the United States. Now, also on this site, there is a biography of Phillis Wheatley. It can be very helpful to read this as you try to interpret the primary source. And you would be welcome to bring in information from this biography into your essay. But it's important to realize that this biography is a secondary source. And in order to fulfill the assignment, you need to be analyzing the primary source. And again, so you can read the biography, you can bring in information from it, but you need to make sure that you are also analyzing, bringing in as evidence, Phillis Wheatley's own words. Let me show you another example. I'm going to go down to a future assignment. This will be one of the assignments on gender. And here we have a link to the First American Cookbook. Now, if you look here, there's a long biography, a relatively long biography of Amelia Simmons. That's what you would first go to when you click on the link. And this is, again, a secondary source. And again, you're more than welcome to bring in information from the secondary source into your essay. But you would also need to make sure that you actually look at the primary source, which is the cookbook itself. So you might want to analyze the kind of information, for instance, that's on this first page, where it's discussing the kind of information that's in there. And you can bring up the entire cookbook as a PDF. So you might look at who she says the work is aimed at, what she hopes it will do. It's calculated to improve, it's calculated for the improvement of the rifling generation of females in America. You might want to look at the kind of instructions she gives and the kind of foods that people are eating at that time. But so the cookbook is the primary source. The introduction and biography is the secondary source. Okay, so that's just a little overview. Remember that you can always go back to the chart here on information on sources. It'll be there all semester. You're also always welcome to email me for clarification if you're looking at a source and you're not quite sure where the primary source starts and the secondary source starts. Okay, great. Thank you.